Love is the answer. Love is the answer.
So, yeah, man. We just watched a video that went up before. There was a guy, Lex Fridman, who was on the Joe Rogan podcast a while back. He's at MIT, specializes in neural networks and artificial intelligence, and he sort of had used some of those tools to produce this video, and we'll have a link in the description so people can check it out.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know how to do that, but maybe we can make it happen.
Down there, up there in the corner, it will just appear in your mind. But yeah, I think I know for me it was a really powerful video. I think mostly me.
No, I think it's a really powerful video, and it's powerful for me on what it encapsulates, and B, the impact that it has on you. I think is really powerful. I think that in itself is something worth talking about.
For sure. I mean, there's lots where we want to dive into, and what we may do too is we may have a break somewhere here just to like play the videos.
There's tobacco and marijuana in there. That's all it is. The combination of tobacco and marijuana is wonderful. First turned onto it by Charlie Murphy, and then reignited by Dave Chappelle. There you go.
That's whiskey.
Haha, exactly.
Perfect. Balances it out.
I mean, alcohol is a drug. It's been grandfathered in.
Well, it's not just a drug. It's a drug that gets a bad rap. Because you just have a little, it's great.
Fine.
Yeah, a little sip here and there, and just inhibitions are relaxed, and shows your true self, and hopefully you're more joyous and friendly and happy.
That's unreal. I think that a future where we are a spacefaring civilization and out there among the stars, this is very exciting. This makes me look forward to the future. This makes me want that future. This may sound corny, but love is the answer.
It is the answer.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. It sounds corny because we're all scared. You know, we're all scared of trying to love people, being rejected, or someone taking advantage of you because you're trying to be loving.
Sure.
But if we all could just relax and love each other.
Wouldn't hurt to have more love in the world.
So, you know, so people don't have to break, and we'll also have that link. But one of the themes I think that stood out is this idea of looking up, of inspiration, and of this outgoing human spirit, this outward going human spirit that is sort of personified in some ways by, when you watch the video, the look on Elon's face when he's like looking up at this thing that it's not his creation because it's a creation of the team.
Sure.
But the team, you could argue, is a manifestation of the energy and the spirit that he brings to things.
For sure.
And how this sort of transcends. It's bigger than him, and it's bigger than the team, and it's a gesture. You know, it's
I like that.
it is a
gesture.
light that shines upward that people can follow. It's almost like religious in a good way, not in like a dogmatic, ideological way, but like in a inspirational way.
For sure. I mean, religion in its purest form is, I feel, something to give people an aspiration to, like some level to like aspire to, right? Like that saintlyhood. So I think it's definitely applicable in that way without the dogma. And I think it gives a vision of what's possible. I mean, when I see that video, it's like, who would have thought that in our lifetime we're looking at colonizing another planet, and to know that there's another human being in my lifetime on the Earth at the same time making something like that possible makes me question what is possible.
Yeah.
And I feel like it removes some limitations that sometimes we put on ourselves, or maybe that society puts on us, of what's doable.
You reevaluate what's possible.
Yeah.
And what's impossible too. You know, you sort of break through these scripts that you have running all the time, where it's like, well, you can't do that, you shouldn't do this, and you free yourself of a mental prison in a way. You know, you realize that where there were walls, where you had thought there were walls, there are not. Where you thought there were ceilings, there are not. And you can break through those. Yeah. Or actually just walk through because they were never there. You know.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I think like to sort of go sequentially in the video, not that you have to think of it that way. You know, to me, when I first saw that video, I laughed because I was like, oh, this is just like, it's Elon Musk having a
blunt.
Hit off the blunt on the Joe Rogan podcast. Yeah. Most people, I think, that's probably a symbol of some kind of, like, it's the genesis of his downfall or something. You know, a lot of people truly think of it that way, right? Because that's how it was portrayed at the time.
Unfortunately,
it is. And that relates to another theme that comes up later, which is that of fear. You know, and I think it's so sad. Like, you could take a cynical view and say something like, we as humanity don't deserve somebody like Elon to come around. He's too good, or even worse, like he's just a spoiled billionaire playing with his expensive toys, and you can go down that road. And that's the road that most people have been told to go down. I don't think they do it intentionally.
Exactly.
But that's what, when I first saw that first moment, I was like, it's like, oh yeah, he smokes the blunt and some, magical colors come up on the screen, like, ha 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 ha. But then you give it, like, just that little bit longer, and it's like we break sort of that realm, this realm, and we get this trip into, like, his mind, or at least how he's thinking of, like, this achievement. Like, that was the Falcon Heavy launch, the clips in the video from that, and it's so good. And I could literally go frame by frame, but I'll spare everyone that. Scene by scene, not frame by frame. That makes me sound like
psychotic.
Parth knows the truth.
I think that, I think the fact that Elon Musk, like, just to touch on something that, like, happens, but the fact that he smokes a blunt on, like, Joe Rogan podcast, he knows that there's a huge viewership, right? He would know the perception that might create. Like, he knows it may impact, like, the stocks even, like, whatever it does or doesn't do in the greater scheme of things. But I think it's his inherent, I guess, maybe, I wouldn't say it's fearlessness, because I don't know the guy, but, like, maybe it's his coping mechanism of his relationship with fear, right? I think his relationship with fear is to a level where he can, I guess, use it to his advantage, right? It's like something that might stop somebody else, he takes as an opportunity. Most people will be like, oh, I'm worried about doing this. He doesn't have that concern because he knows that beyond fear is possibility, right? So, like, smoking a blunt on a Joe Rogan podcast is not something to be feared. It could be an opportunity to create more awareness and to create more discussion, right? Something like going to Mars, or like however, like, there must be a billion steps to get to Mars, right? Most people would look at that mountain or look at that wall of stairs and say, nah, I'm too scared about that. Yeah. But rather, he seems to be like, let's take it one step at a time, right? And I think it's his relationship with fear that lets him do something. So what Naveen Jain, or what people call moonshots, right? Moonshots of effort. And so, like, I think it's his relationship with fear is what's inspiring to me personally. Like, he's in his mind, he's come to a understanding with fear. Yeah. Well, and like you talk about with those, like, moonshots, and, like, another literal phrase that comes up in the video and in that interview is "out there among the stars," which obviously is a direct reference to flying a spacecraft into outer space. But I think you could also interpret that, and in sort of an emotional sense, I think of it as like you're out there among the stars that are inspired and created in people. Like, they are the stars. And the hopefulness of living in a future where you're out there among the stars is both you're pursuing those moonshots, but you're amongst people who are burning brightly. Yeah. And who are shining brightly is perhaps a better way to phrase it. And
that's a world you want to live in, and it's not a world that is attainable if you identify only with that fear.
Yeah.
Like you say, like if that fear hijacks you, if that fear is your guiding light rather than looking to the stars, looking up, you end up looking around, you end up being resentful and comparing yourself to others and what they have and what you don't, and you never feel that gratefulness for what you may have and what you could bring to the table, and how you move that next step up the ladder to whatever you're moving towards. It's different for everyone, so there's no one answer, but yeah, I mean, that's that topic of love that comes up in the video is contrasted with fear.
Yeah.
You know, where people are afraid of probably more things than they could even realize at any given time. And that shuts that love, that possibility down. And like you were telling me earlier, like you look around and you can see that like reflected.
Yeah. When you
in
walk
others.
around, when I walk around and see, like, particularly like in the streets of this city, Vancouver, there's just something about the expression on people's faces. Like it's a place of affluence, but like in the downtown area, for example, like I see, and this will be the same in like New York and like London and like, you know, all of these like places with a dense population and where there's such a disparity between affluence and poverty, is like I feel even the affluent aren't conscious. It's the lack of awareness, and people are like, you know, buying like $1,000 jackets and like, but like what for? Like they're fearful of the way that others perceive them, so they feel like they need to invest in these things to get approval, right? But really, like the realization I had a realization this morning is that the best gift that you can give another person is understanding. Like if you just understand where they're coming from, and like you understand what they're worried about and give them love and compassion, and that's what they're talking about in the video. Like the world could use a little more love, right? That's like, love is the answer. If you come to a person or a situation or a place with love and understanding, like I dare you to not make a difference.
Well, and again, like as we talked about last time as well, like there's love does not always mean just like, oh, like even though people will say things like unconditional love, it doesn't always mean making excuses for things. It can mean like what some people might call tough love too, where it's like, I understand, I'm here for you, and I want to help you, but that's difficult.
Yeah.
And my love to you might not always be, you know, sunshine, rainbows, happy things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's abusive or that it's some kind of dark, malevolent thing at all.
No.
But, you know, like parents with their children, like sometimes you have to explain the risks of things. You have to start to develop habits that promote, you know, responsibility and care for themselves, and that's not always easy. So you don't always feel like brushing your teeth when you're 3 and there's the whole wide world out there.
Yeah.
And there's that's the connection between the now and the entirety of both your life, but the lives of people that you're connected to. You know, that idea that we're nodes in a network, and that your decisions do or don't matter, and they do actually.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you want to admit it.
Yeah.
And because we're interconnected in that network sense, if we fail to love ourselves and others, that network suffers. It drags. It's like pushing down on a trampoline. The whole thing
I like that.
skews.
Sure.
And it prevents us from that upward vision, and first starts here but then brings us down.
Yeah.
And like you say, that love is the answer. I mean, it's one of those things that people would write off because it sounds too easy and too simple, but it's simple because of its power and its profundity, you know, like it's profound. And a difficult thing to contend with, I think.
Definitely, and that's where the fear piece comes in, because like when you have a lot of love, when you have nothing but love and you are like, you're opposing it, it's like you need to look within and see that, oh, there's actually a lot of things that are like just can unravel, right? And you don't know what to expect from inside of yourself. And a lot of people, including me sometimes, aren't ready to deal with what's going to come out if they face that fear and give themselves the love.
Yeah.
It's the deprivation of love that's like caused us to create so many coping mechanisms and to switch off so many like emotions that we inherently have, right? We're meant to be feeling, we're meant to be, we're beings of emotion, right? And we turn these emotions off to survive in society, in the world, and like, that doesn't matter to me, like, I don't care about that, but it should. It should matter, because everything matters. We're made up of matter, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's, our existence is of matter.
That's all we've got.
Yeah. And so, and so, like, I just feel that the fear piece is what is stopping us from accepting all the love, and particularly from the love for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. Once you start, like, I think there was a podcast with Tim Ferriss. I can't remember the exact guest, but it was like, when you see someone that you don't like, right, you're disliking the reflection of yourself in that person. Those qualities that person is exhibiting, it's maybe something that you haven't come to terms with within yourself, right? And that's where that, like, you shut off. You don't want to deal with that person. But in fact, if you try to make a bridge of love and try to understand that you actually have the same struggles as humans, then you can, you know, come to that conversation with the perspective of compassion,
right?
And break down the barrier of fear within yourself.
It's like this idea that, like, for every finger pointing that you're pointing out, there's 3 pointing back, you know, this way, and there's something that's not immediately intuitive about that as well, where it's like people will be very quick to suggest fixes for, like, the global economic system while their life is in tatters.
Yeah.
And yet that self-love you're talking about requires that sometimes you look inward at those things that are frustrating you out there and figure out, well, hold on, is that maybe just my own projection of something that is eating away at me?
Yeah, it's like that person does action A and it upsets me. Ask not why does that person do action A, ask why does it upset me?
Yeah. Yeah. And there is that sort of that motive force, like that emotion, that motive force we talked about in the Interstellar chat, like it is a force. It's this thing that, like, when you're dissatisfied, when you see something, maybe it's not even an individual, but it's an opportunity for, like, this is the world I want to live in, and there's a potential between where we could be and where we are, and it's, like, frustrating that you're not there.
Yeah.
And that can lead to that despair, I think, as well. That's a component of that fear, where you throw your hands up and say, well, what can I do?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just one person.
Yeah. But it all starts with one.
Well, and also, and that's that idea of being a node in a network.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just one person. You are, a lot of who you are is a result of the people you know and the people that surround you. That doesn't necessarily even mean your closest friends or family. Like, we talked earlier about, you're at the store and someone says, hi, like, can I help you ring that up? And you just say, yeah, you know, that's one way to respond.
Yeah.
You'd say, yeah, thanks so much, you know, having some gratitude, and then having the simplest pieces of outreach to them, saying, like, how's your day going? Or even coming out of, like, I like to really come out of right field sometimes and just have something totally crazy to say.
Yeah.
And maybe not everyone appreciates that, but at least it kind of, like, shakes the box a little.
Exactly. Shakes the box. Absolutely. That's a really good way of putting it, because I think, like, with day-to-day life, we're very conditioned. Like, for example, I called someone on the phone for some customer service, and I was put in line. I was saying this to you earlier. And it was like, please hold, like, there's a lot of people calling, like, you'll be next soon. Anyway, so the guy was like, hey, I'm Andrew, what's going on? And, like, I was like, hey, Andrew, how's your day? And he had to, like, that was not what he was used to.
Yeah.
He was used to solve, issue, solution. And he was like, oh wait, someone's asking about me. I gotta, like, think about this for a second.
Yeah.
It was so, like, it was a little bit sad, but also a little bit great because I got to have like that little bit of impact on that person, and I think by the end of the conversation, like he said some stuff, and I was like, oh, I really appreciate the way you said that, and like you really navigated that politically correct terrain like really well.
Right.
And he was like, I think I heard like the relief and gratitude in his voice.
Yeah, it's always it's a bit mysterious to me exactly what's. Yeah, because we think of everything in a very utilitarian sense, right? Like, I'm going to go to the store and get a pound of flour and then, or whatever, and come home and this is the market price for that, and that has its place. But then there are these other things that don't lend themselves to that kind of compartmentalization, that kind of quantification. And, like, take, for example, like, when, like, music has no value. Now, of course, people... economically, but people spend money to go hear music, they buy music, but it has no inherent use in and of itself. It's useless.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
don't-
No. I see what
You
you're
get
saying,
it.
and I agree. Yeah.
But it clearly has value still.
Yeah.
That just doesn't, it's hard, it's more abstract.
Yeah.
And then I mention this because when you're in these interactions with people, it's like, well, what does it matter? You know, he knows why I'm calling in. This is just, you know, we're just having a conversation to accomplish something with the service plan on my whatever cable. It doesn't really matter what it is. But,
Yeah.
And yet, because we undervalue those things, we assume because we don't understand what's really going on, that we can just move away from things like that. That we can just move in a transactional world. And we undervalue the world that gets created when you make those choices.
Yeah.
Those simple little choices to ask, was it Matthew? Is his name? The guy on the phone?
Andrew.
Andrew,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
To ask Andrew about his day.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like, who knows what his next conversation will be like.
Exactly.
Or he'll maybe get home that night and like sit down and say like, fuck, I've really gotta like do that thing, you know, I was meaning to do.
Yeah.
And it can literally be like that little thing. And
Yeah.
of course it's the sum of those things. So if 5 people do that instead of just you, Andrew's a different Andrew.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the butterfly effect, right? Like like a butterfly flaps its wings and it makes like winds change like on the other side of the earth.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, with like, it's funny you should say that because like that was basically a sci-fi movie with fucking Ashton Kutcher, right? Like it's like
What a film.
It's like yeah.
Yeah.
What a film. But it's this idea of things that are cliche. Like I would say the butterfly effect is like
Sure.
something people would say like, oh yes, it's a mystical little lilting thing out there that crazy people who smoke too much weed talk about or something. I don't know.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that the guy who destroyed Tesla? Didn't you believe in that? But so often those things that people just discount as those cliched things, it's that fear again.
Yeah.
Or it's like there's such a profound truth there that it's like you open that up and you're like, whoa, okay, I'm just gonna pretend that has no value.
Exactly right. So when
Yeah.
you say people say like it's a cliche or like those things are like pretentious, it's like actually they have a point. They're incredibly poignant sayings. You're just afraid to delve beneath it,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like yeah, it's almost like it's too much to deal with, so I'm just gonna make fun of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm all about humor, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's sometimes you need to like open the can and see how deep the hole really is.
Well, and the problem is that sometimes there's some things that are rational fears that then once you move past them, they're just like gone. Like I'm afraid of seagulls, and then you get over it, and not much changes other than that you're not irrationally afraid of the seagulls anymore.
Sure.
Maybe it is rational. I don't know.
They're out to get you.
But there's often a real utility to fear. Like just take like the idea of being more responsible for things in your life. It's like, okay, well if you're afraid of that, it's not like once you say, okay, maybe I do need to take responsibility for these things I've been avoiding. It's not like all of a sudden everything's just fine now. It's like there's actual work that has to be done.
Exactly.
So those are the things that are really, and that's a lot of those cliches come from that, because as soon as you accept, oh, like maybe it actually does matter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now there's a whole bill to be paid, metaphorically speaking.
Absolutely.
Or maybe literally, but
No,
mostly metaphorically.
that's a great way of putting it.
And yeah, but I mean but I think the world just gets worse if that's not a choice people are willing to make, and if people don't acknowledge they have the choice. That in fact you don't get the luxury of not making the choice, because if you pretend like you don't have a choice, that's still a decision you can make.
You're making the choice to not have a choice.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that thing, like, let's just take diet for example, right?
Yeah.
If someone says like, oh, I shouldn't eat A, then it's like, oh, if I don't eat A for the reason, it's like, oh, it has a negative impact on my health.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, actually, I need to reassess everything that I eat. I need to change my entire lifestyle to serve my body better. But do I want to do that? Like, that seems like a lot of effort.
Well, also, often they're looking at just one component. Like, if we're talking about eating, it's like, okay, well, maybe you even know exactly the right thing to eat.
Yeah.
But maybe you don't understand why you weren't just eating that in the first place. Because there's like, how many people have emotionally eaten something in their life? Like, everyone. Like, who hasn't, you know? And I would say they're lying if they say otherwise.
Yeah,
maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some freak of nature out there, but I doubt it, you know? Like, because from birth, you know, if you don't have a drive to eat, you'll die.
Yeah.
So it has to be an emotional experience. And that can easily get contorted and hijacked. So these simple things like, oh, I should just eat better. Or we talk about, like, sleep. And the importance of sleep. There's like 100 things in a day that can sidetrack trying to get enough sleep at the right time, in the right way.
Yeah.
And all these tiny little battles that occur. And these are like simple things that are like, you know, who doesn't know how to go to bed or make themselves dinner?
Yeah.
Let alone building a rocket ship and going to Mars, you know, like, or some really...
Yeah. But I think that's where the love piece ties in, because, like, do you have enough love for yourself and your being and your consciousness to give it what it needs to thrive?
Yeah.
Like, if you're not taking care of yourself, then, like, of course it's going to be difficult to help everybody else.
Yeah.
And to accomplish goals that are, like, impactful to billions of people.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, too, eh? Because it sounds like, oh, if you're like focused, like obviously it's not an either or. It's not like I'm all focused on myself or not.
No.
But you're absolutely right. Like you know, like maybe you can help one person do something or two, but what about 100 or 1,000? You know, like there's this idea that the more people you can help, the better, and of course that's true. But if you can't even start with the one that's you, you know, maybe you trying to help the world or someone else is just a way to distract from things you're afraid to face, you know. And I think we see a lot of that in, like, I know, so I won't name names right now, but people I know well in family and friends circles who are like so obsessed with, like, and I think they truly come from an altruistic place, or what they would think was an altruistic place, but I'm going to help this person. But I could list a dozen things that they have to work on.
Yeah.
And of course you could to some degree work on both at the same time, but it's like,
sure.
I don't know.
I think it's always, like, the thing is, like, the self-work never ends.
Yeah.
Like, it never ends. Like, for as long as I'll be alive, like, I plan to work on myself.
Yeah.
Right? And rarely do I find myself at an opportunity to be like, okay, now I can help someone else with this. Because I'm constantly evolving ideas, constantly evolving information and knowledge and understanding, and, like, I think it's the assumption that we know is the, like,
you know what to do for someone else, you mean?
Or just that we know anything is when we kind of, like, sometimes hinder our own progression. Like, once you're like, cool, I know, then you can turn off and be complacent. But you need to be continually searching, continually striving, continually evolving your own thought processes and encouraging others to do the same. I'm not going to tell someone else that, hey, I know what's best for you. I'm going to say, hey, you should ask more questions about the way that you're living. Is it the best way for you? Like, if you're saying, if people who are like, oh, I don't meditate, it doesn't work for me. It's like, have you tried? Have you given it enough time? Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're just making an assumption.
And sometimes it's even further back from that, where it's like, because even that I know would be too. I'm not like this is an accusation, but like that's too on the nose for most people. They would get defensive.
Yeah.
You know, there's a curiosity that comes prior to that. It's like, have you ever felt like overwhelmed or trouble sleeping? You know, I'm just picking things off the top of my head, but you start with that curiosity, like that child's mind type of thing of like, okay, have you ever wondered about, and then topic of conversation that you're approaching, and sometimes that's not even enough. Like a lot of people aren't ready for like meditation. I'm not saying they shouldn't.
No.
But I mean ready in their own. They haven't arrived at that stage in their journey yet.
Exactly, and they're not. They're writing off a process, and by writing off that process, they're choosing not to walk down the path of awareness.
Yeah.
Right. If you say that's not for me, that's something that you don't need to look at in your consciousness, in yourself. Right. That's like you're turning a blind eye to that facet. Right. But however, if you're aware of it and you say, okay, this may have some value, then you can kind of explore it. Okay, and you open up yourself to that opportunity, right? Because it all begins with one step. Like meditation for someone might be like the 100th step, right? But you need to take the first step, the first 10 steps, the first 25 steps to get there. If you just say that's not for me, it's going to be a very difficult existence. I'm not talking about meditation. I'm talking about anything, like any endeavor that you choose, anything that you want to do. Like if you say like, oh, accomplishing that big thing is not for me, then like, bummer.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, like I hear what you're saying too, but it's not just about meditation. Meditation may be a bad example.
Yeah.
Like, there are probably like
eating well, exercising.
Exercise. These are all things that most people have dabbled with, at least in their minds, or while they're scrolling through Facebook and thinking like, "Fuck, you gotta do that."
Yeah,
whatever it is. Maybe it's not any of the things we've talked about.
Sure,
but it's first having that honest conversation about that is some part of you, you know, because even people that are like fucking miserable, right? There's some aspect that knows they're miserable. You know, at a minimum, they know they're in pain in some way. So there's some part of them that recognizes this discord. You know, and I would say there's a certain benevolence to that. That there's a certain goodness within them that's trying in some way to like shout out and say, "Be better."
Yeah.
And the trouble is, because of the fear that we've talked about, this fear of the responsibility that might bring, or the pain that might bring. Oh, that'd be even more pain. I haven't been to the gym in years. I'll be sore. Or I don't like the way that tastes. I like my pizza. Trust me, I like my pizza. I think too. There's like this. I don't know if it's like a guy thing, but I don't think so. There's like an embarrassment of being like moved by things for a lot of people. You know, like I feel it sometimes. Like I don't like crying in movies, and I do. Interstellar.
I used to not like. I used to be like, suck it up, but now I'm just like, let it out, man. Just
yeah. I'm better with that now, but there's still like some part that's like, you know.
Sure.
I know that's not just me, and it's not just like you just said, but you had it in the past as well.
Yeah.
But like, it's not always crying. It's just it's like it's not cool or whatever to show an emotional connection with things that and maybe it comes from like school, like when you're like in like primary, elementary, high school, where it's like you're kind of in like a little prison, so like any weakness gets like pounced upon
very true
and exploited.
Yeah.
But like, cause you know, bring us like one of the triggers for this particular conversation in that video. It's just like it's obviously not going to connect with everyone, but if it does, and if any little component does, it's important to almost have that conversation with like that part of you. Like when you feel that, like if you put your hand on a hot stove, you're feeling that is a piece of information. It's like your hand will be useless to you if you continue to burn it on this hot stove. And yet we don't see that same value and that connection to how our emotions, but also just our, you could say, I guess, subconscious world communicates with us. We discount it. Like, well, it's like with the placebo effect. People are like, oh, it's just the placebo effect. It's like, oh, that's just in your head. That's just your emotions. It's like, okay, well, they know a lot more than the thing that's saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Placebo is like, oh, it's just your mind having the effect that we think an external factor is going to have. It actually turns out your mind is way more powerful and capable than you give it credit for.
It's really humorous to me, isn't it? Like, it's like, oh, that's just placebo effect. It's like, what is that exactly? It's like, oh, that's when like your mind thinks you're getting a drug that could cure your cancer, and then it actually does, but that's just bullshit. And it's like, are you sure? Like, it seems like we might want to look into that.
Yeah, the placebo effect is like underused, if anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But it to me is just, it's about the attitude surrounding that type of thing.
Definitely.
Where I truly think it is that fear, because it's then suggesting that, you said earlier, like when you think you know everything, you've stopped developing, you've staunched that curiosity. And maybe it's to appease that part of ourselves that wants to think we have everything, we've got everything understood. Here's the whole map of the world. See, there's no shadowy corners that we haven't explored yet. It's all right here.
Sure.
It's all in the periodic table. It's all in the textbook. And yet, there's so much that we don't understand. And as soon as we expose ourselves to any of that, it's usually just written off as woo-woo or bullshit. Partly because some of it is.
Sure.
Sometimes.
Sure.
But not all of it.
No, and I think science itself is like a very humble pursuit, because science itself continually proves itself wrong.
Yeah.
Right? The more we observe like the universe, the more we try to apply like the laws of physics, we realize that, oh, actually, we can't make sense of what's going on. Like, and we need to reevaluate our understanding constantly. Like, I think someone's going to be negating Einstein's theory of relativity soon. Like, there's all these concepts that we've built our world on. Literally, our civilizations have been built on specific laws or concepts of human understanding, and with more information and a greater pursuit, we're seeing that they're not actually real.
Yeah. Well, it's that skepticism that gets a lot. Like, I hear more and more people talk about science now as like, well, it's science. It's settled science. It's like, there's no such thing as settled science.
Yeah.
Like, almost nothing is settled science.
Yeah.
The whole idea is that you're continually skeptical and trying to disprove and challenge ideas. And I'm not saying that obviously established scientific knowledge has no value. It's just that the most important piece is that curiosity, that skepticism, and that process.
Yes.
And it's become like weirdly ideological lately for people. People will talk about science not in that way. They'll talk about science as like, the scientists have decreed, and then whatever.
Yeah. It's almost like oh, the science says this, so now I don't have to think for myself.
Yeah. And it's funny, like we talk about like diet, for example. Like, I think I've heard a scientific justification for just about every type of diet, and then it contradicts 5 years later, and then it suggests we don't really understand anything about that, and that's right in front of us. Like, who doesn't eat? Yeah.
And that's a decision we make every day, like 3 to 4 times a day.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely, I think that power of, I think it's that fear, and like having an understanding that there's never an absence of fear, but that the fear should not be the overriding principle, value, emotive force that we give into.
Definitely. Fear shouldn't be governing us. We should be governed by love, and we should have a relationship with fear that helps us, not cripples us or hinders us.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why people, I think, Elon Musk, they've navigated their relationship with fear in a way that's allowed them to be so, I guess, productive. And we look at them and we're like, how can somebody achieve so much? How can somebody do so many good things and like have that, noble intent for civilization. It's because it's because like he says, love is the answer. Like he loves humanity enough to dedicate his life in a pursuit to perpetuate humanity, right? To be amongst the stars, right? Like that believing in a cause that's greater than himself, right? And acknowledging the fact that there is fear to be dealt with, but things are possible once that fear is dealt with.
It's information.
Yeah.
The fear is information. It's not a stop sign.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or a wall that you have now passed here you shall not pass.
Yeah. It's not a decision maker. It's not, fear is not saying do this or do that. It's just giving you data so that you can navigate with more awareness.
It might even be the thing you should move towards in some cases, not every
Yeah,
case.
no, I think many times.
Yeah. Especially if it's a more abstract fear.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think if it's something that you're worried about, or like not worried, but if it's something that you're fearful, that's what they say, face your fears, right? If you have a fear of heights, go rock climbing, right? If you have a fear of water, like go swimming, learn how to swim. If you have like all those things, like jump head first into your fear, because overcoming the fear will open more doors within yourself and of your understanding of yourself. And you can apply that in how you communicate with the world and your exterior.
Well, and I think that the other interesting thing when you say communicate with the world, when you see somebody, and this is what I think part of is powerful about the video and about Elon and all that, is like when you see somebody who has decided to, knowing the fear, do it anyway, it's like everyone else is like, oh shit, like that's okay, and like immediately it gives permission to, now with the way communication occurs, possibly billions of people to do the same, to move, to escape their mental prison of like, I can't do that, or that's not possible, or whatever. And it's probably in the ways that they would think of it as being the littlest ways. You know, emptying the sink of that shit from last night, or putting their laundry away, you know. It's going to be something like that little, where they're like, no, it's worth it, it matters, I'm going to do it now. And then that cascades on to the next thing and the next thing. You know?
There's like I think there's a quote or a saying, I can't remember exactly where it's from, but it's saying the thing that you like are most afraid of, or the whatever you don't want to do most, you should do next.
It's come up in a lot of the Tim Ferriss stuff, but also Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. I don't know if it's that's a good book, by the way. I don't know if it's not long, and for anyone listening too, if you want to check that out, it's this. He conceptualizes this as resistance. Like when you're moving towards a goal that you've decided has value, you encounter resistance, and that's the I don't feel like it. That's the I don't have time. It's this endless sort of negotiation between that part of you that has decided this is the thing I want to do, and the resistance. And basically the whole book is like it's almost fiction in a weird way. Like it has all these sort of aphorisms and metaphors to describe it. But yeah, like you say, like that thing you least want to do is probably the thing you should do next. And it's so often stupid things like calling someone, or like filling out a form or whatever. You know?
Definitely.
I think as we blow things out of proportion in our head, you know, it's like if you want to lose weight, it's like your goal is 50 pounds. It's like, I'm going to get up tomorrow and lose 50 pounds.
Yeah.
I can't. There has to be a thing you do.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm going to put my gym clothes out on the floor so that I can put them on more easily and go.
Yeah.
And then that's part of that self-love too. Like you create you pre-create your own failure by making something unachievable your next step. So then you get to say like, I told you, you know, I told you this wasn't possible.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's a really interesting way to put it.
Have you ever had a situation like that?
I'm sure, yeah, if I think about it, for sure, like subconsciously you like set yourself up to fail so that you don't have to try again. Because you're like, that didn't work, I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It can even be interpersonally too, right? Like you maybe know you need to have a better relationship with somebody at work or in your personal life or in your family, and you purposely set it up, maybe not consciously, but you find like, oh wow, like I know there was probably a way that I could have done that would have been more successful or less chance of failure anyway. Whatever.
Yeah, no, I get
Finds
you.
failure.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I think for that reason, that self-love would, like, if you think of self-love as like if you were talking to a good friend or a good family member and trying to not necessarily advise them in like a paternalistic sense, but like give them helpful guidance, you would say like maybe start with like just this little thing here. You know, it's that compassionate piece of the love, but also a realistic sense that you don't want to set yourself up for failure because you don't want to give yourself yet another excuse to spiral back downwards. So
For sure.
yeah.
I think our main camera ran out of battery, so.
Well, man, that was a good chat. I finished all of my lion's mane,
Likewise.
and I didn't even pop my pinky up once.
Oh, what a shame.
It really is. Dude.
Yeah, great chatting as always.
Yeah.
I think for me it's going to be a reassessment of what am I afraid of
Yeah.
and what can I do to address that fear and how can I set myself up to not fail so I can avoid working on whatever my subconscious is trying to avoid. That was a really profound moment for me just then.
And I think it's like when you and I were talking earlier and you were having a moment in your day where there's so much where we have headphones in, we have screens on, we have stimuli that distracts us. And one of the biggest fears can be like set that all aside for a minute.
Yeah.
And let that feeling that probably starts as a feeling, not as a thought, like let that tension relax so you can listen to that thing that you're afraid of and have a conversation with yourself with love about whatever comes up.
Yeah.
Because and not to write it off too as like if it seems as though it's something prosaic and like a day-to-day, you know, because like I said, maybe it's something like I know right now I've been meaning to clean up one section of my workspace at home. There's like papers there and I gotta mail some stuff away, and those things clutter, and they're not like some big piece of my life, like, oh, my life will align if I can just return that thing to Amazon. But that's one of dozens of things that then clutter your progress towards something else.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, giving yourself permission to face those fears maybe would be a way to think about it. I don't know.
Exactly. I think that's what, I mean, for me, watching that video and seeing Elon Musk speak and do things that are not necessarily accepted, yeah, gives me the inspiration to face my own fears and try and approach my day-to-day existence with more love.
Yeah.
Because he's right, love is the answer.
This may sound corny.
But it's true. I'm gonna come over here so we can finish in one frame.
We're gonna finish on camera.
Thanks everyone for tuning in again.
Yeah.
I think love is the answer is probably a good departing note, as always.
And we want to hear from you guys too, so anything you want to share, drop a comment below the video. If you're hearing this elsewhere, you can shoot us a message on any of the social media or emails we have linked below.
Thanks so much for tuning in again.